significant other in here. It's a restricted area.
The series that I have for you all today has been floating around in the back of my brain for quite a while. It isn't too often that we cover the likes of Five Nights at Freddy's analog horror, but today, we are getting back into the animatronic suit. Now, FNAF isn't a series that I am all too familiar with when it comes to its deep, extensive lore, and boy, for FNAF does it certainly run deep. And what a better time to get into what is probably the most disturbing and brutal piece of FNAF media that I have had the pleasure of coming across, given the sequel is almost here. While the games and movies have disturbing stories behind them, most of the time it's hidden in the background through puzzles and Easter eggs, whereas when FNAF is brought to analog horror, it's a whole different ballgame. So I am both nervous and excited to get back into this world. As always, if you haven't already, be sure to check out the original series created by 12man before we take on the night shift over here at 4+. But let's get inside our protective animatronic suit, I hope it doesn't spring lock on us, and head into the FNAF VHS tapes that I gotta say, is one of the most disturbing depictions of this universe that I have yet to see. But before I let you get too far, just wanted to say if you're new here and enjoy what you're watching, be sure to hit all those neat buttons down below as it really helps support the channel. I'll also have linked in the description below our socials and the 4-player gaming channel where we dive into the terrifying world of horror video games. But anyways, now you can pass through. Medical Imaging, Tape 1. Our story begins at the Brighton Clinic of Hope in the Department of Radiology and Diagnostic Imaging. We are met with VHS footage and can see one of the doctors at his desk, Leon, before his boss can be heard coming in, who we learn is named Grace. The two talk for a bit, just some work-related topics, before we find out that Leon had actually called Grace in here for something specific. He asks if one of the doctors had forwarded her some urgent information about CT scans they have conducted over the last few weeks, but Grace hasn't heard anything about it. Leon goes on to explain that over the last 2 weeks, he has been getting quite the odd cases, things he had never seen at his last job. And when Grace asks him why he has the camera set up, Leon reveals quite the interesting information.
Computer.
Why do you need this camera?
It's my tool to record evidence that might be useful in catching this children's poisoner.
Children? Poisoner?
Yeah, but
My reaction exactly, Grace. A child poisoner. He goes onto the computers and pulls up 4 different cases that he claims scare the living shit out of him. He's really building up the suspense for poor Grace. The first case involved Ricky Summers, only 7 years old, and came in with complaints about severe abdominal pain, vomiting, fever, and muscular pain, all after eating at a certain Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. Grace has heard all about this place, as there are already rumors of people going missing from inside the restaurant. It's believed that Ricky Summers was just suffering from food poisoning or the flu, but every test they did came back negative. So that is when Leon ran the CT scan. And if this whole setting wasn't ominous enough, the sounds of this ancient computer aren't making it any better.
take a look at this.
Once the image loads in, Grace is rightfully disturbed, and Leon explains to us that what we are looking at here is cystic echinococcosis. And for those of you who had no idea what that was, prepare to have your whole day ruined. This is when you have a cystic-like larva of tapeworms growing inside of you.
What the hell no?
Unfortunately, according to Leon, this usually only gets discovered once it's too late. The growth gets too big and ruptures, and then death. To make matters even worse, the next 3 cases he has The next 3 cases he has on the computer all share the same diagnosis. We load up the second CT scan and see a very familiar situation going on. What makes it all suspicious, however, is that Leon states that it is practically impossible for the people of Brighton to contract this disease. Leon talks about how he had then learned from the parents that they had all eaten at the same Freddy Fazbear's Pizza before these symptoms had occurred. And this is when Leon drops what he believes had gone down there.
Turns out, some sick fuck roams around there and adds God knows what shit into the pizzas with motherfucking tapeworm eggs in it.
As if stuffing children into animatronic suits wasn't bad enough, Afton is now going around and poisoning them with tapeworm eggs. At least, who else would it be? Who would have thought that this guy could possibly get even more sinister than he already was? The third case is said to be the worst one yet. The patient had complaints of headaches and periodic loss of consciousness, and as it turns out, a different type of tapeworm had made its way into the patient's brain, and she died before even making it to surgery. Before we learn about the fourth case, Another doctor barges into the room and gives us the unsettling news.
Another urgency. Patient, age 7, from ER in less than 2 minutes.
That's right, a 5th case has just entered the hospital. The patient is under heavy anesthesia and is getting prepped for a scan. As the doctors are frantically trying to get ready, we can hear the mother's haunting screams faintly in the back.
Hey, don't let that kid's mother in here. It's a restricted area.
Our tape then cuts forward a bit, and we watch as the CT scan is about to begin. Leon lists off the symptoms, and sure enough, they match that of the previous cases. Apparently, according to the patient's teacher, they were caught vomiting gallons of blood in class. Are we sure this kid is still alive right now? The first scan to load onto the computer is the brain, to which it said there doesn't seem to be anything abnormal. Next up is the chest scan, which reveals something a lot more horrifying.
Try manipulating the image with brightness and contrast.
Sure enough, there are tapeworms, and it said they are literally eating his liver as they speak. And they aren't stopping there, they are making their way towards his heart. The next scan begins to load up, but it is interrupted by the most disturbing scene yet.
What's going on?
Ah, shit, he woke up. Abort the procedure!
What?
The doctors try to keep the child calm, which can't even be possible given the amount of excruciating pain he is in. And unfortunately, it doesn't sound like he lasted much longer. They all try their best to defibrillate him, but their efforts ultimately fail, and the time of death is called. All the doctors are rightfully very distraught, and Leon tells them that they need to report this to the authorities. They need to bring the person who did this to justice. They walk out of the room to inform the mother of the passing, and our tape then cuts out. Before that, however, is one of the most blink and you miss it moments, but a face ends up appearing over the computer screen before we cut out. Then it appears that something else ends up taking over our footage. The next thing we see is a Brighton newspaper. Health hazard family restaurant finally closes its doors for good. After a recent mass bout of food poisoning involving various parasitic infections with 2 fatal cases, the US FDA has ordered the closure of the restaurant and the dissolution of the Fazbear Entertainment Company at the request of the management and staff of the Radiology and Diagnostic Imaging Department at Brighton's Clinic of Hope. The FDA issued a warrant for the arrest of restaurant owner William Afton. The owner did not admit to the above-mentioned complaints. He stubbornly insisted that it was impossible for children to get poisoned by stale food from his restaurant. We then read about Ricky Summers, where it says a huge 3-inch wide tapeworm cyst was discovered in the liver during a CT scan. Text begins to appear over the paper. William Afton and his cook were sentenced to 1 year in prison. Such low penalty infuriated Brighton residents and parents, who were seeking justice. Riots broke out. The residents burned down William's house. They essentially Freddy Kruegered him. Before the tape ends, we read that by order of a state court, William has been relocated to another state. Said state was Texas in a town called Bellwood. Under his new provided identity, he served his sentence there. On February 7th, 1986, he was released early for good behavior. Is he really gone? For good? What a frightening start to this series. This is definitely one of the most different takes for FNAF that I have seen, taking us into a doctor's point of view at the hospital and seeing the effects they go through after receiving the victims of William Afton as patients. It's really a psychological horror moment since all we have to do is sit and listen to the terror unfolding in the background. Speaking of terror in the background, the description gives us a bit more context as to where exactly this footage is coming from. Note from Adam. The tape was found in a trash bag near the bus station. Shows camcorder footage recorded by Dr. Leonard Smokes. The video shows an emergency CT scanning procedure conducted on a very sick 7-year-old patient. As far as I know, the footage was presumably given to the Food and Drug Administration and the FBI. Very likely this footage wasn't meant to be seen by the public and we're doing something very illegal. Sounds like Adam is our tape collector. Probably should look into some therapy after making this haunting discovery. Security camera feed. Tape 2. The tape loads in, and we are met with the same question presented near the end of the last tape. Was he really gone for good? We then cut to classic FNAF format, checking security cameras for any suspicious activity. Our first camera has us at the main diner, and it's hard to see at first, but a familiar friend is hanging out ominously in the dark. We zoom in and can see it's Balloon Boy. What a pal. We scope out the rest of the area before moving towards the main stage, and we can see the core cast of characters: Freddy, Bonnie, and Chica. Chica's looking a bit shocked over there. We cut over to the Foxy stage and can see he definitely isn't looking too good. All mangled up, if you know what I mean. Up next is the arcade, which seems to not have much going on before we check out the book hallway, which also seems quiet. A bit too quiet. Should have appreciated the quiet while it lasted, considering we cut over to the service room. There is no video, just the audio, and what we hear is what sounds like a bunch of flies and rats rummaging through the room. I wonder why there is no video for that room only, and what could be attracting all the critters. Do we even want to know? The next room we survey is the hall, but the vent sensor ends up going off. Movement has been found. For some reason, we decide to ignore the sensor and cut to the arcade camera, and for a very brief frame during a camera glitch, a girl's face can be seen staring directly at us. I'd be looking for a new job right about now. Returning to the Foxy stage, we can now see that Mangle is no longer where they once were. Probably shouldn't have ignored the vents. Sure enough, we hear what sounds like someone getting attacked from somewhere in the building. The camera cuts out and we are taken to found footage format, following our night guard as he locks himself in the bathroom and is rightfully freaking the hell out. However, it sounds like whatever attacked him returned to the vents, still on the hunt. We run into one of the stalls to hide. An hour passes by and we are still inside the stall. Looks like this is our home now. Our character, however, realizes that in only an hour is 6 AM. Just like the games, that's the safe zone. Another hour passes by, and just like that, it's 6. Our character mentions that he hasn't heard anything crazy since around 5, so we should be in the clear. We aren't taking any chances, however. We are waiting for someone else to come for us. However, about 20 minutes pass and no one else has come, so we open up the stall and go for the bathroom door. There's just a little problem.
Jesse! Jesse!
Yep, the door is locked. We bang on the door trying to get it open, but all that noise has attracted a visitor.
Come on, open, you motherfucker, open!
Our next scene has an image of the night guard who was just attacked, slowly fading onto screen, while we listen in on the message he likely got when the night started. We learn that the animatronics have the built-in criminal database, and that this is the 14th night guard to work at this location. The pay better be incredible, but who am I kidding? The last guard had reported that the animatronics were moving around throughout the night, and in one instance even got into the office, just like what we had just witnessed. The engineers don't have any explanation for it, so they just assume it to be impossible. Guess the night guards are just lying, except now we have footage to prove otherwise. Our footage ends up glitching out, and the face of Mangle appears on screen. However, the last thing we see on this tape is an image of a little girl, with an automated voice in the back saying missing since May 14th, 1987. Just like the last tape, our description has a lengthy email attached from Adam Turner, our modern-day tape collector. Hello, Harold. It's been quite a while since we last talked. I wanted to tell you something about my recent findings. I spotted something lying on the tracks while waiting for the subway car to arrive. Upon closer look, I realized it was indeed a VHS tape lying down there. I asked the security if they could pull that tape out and give it to me. At home, I wanted to check its contents. There were no markings besides manufacturer information and My Lovely Madeline written on the side label. The first 40 minutes of the tape were just private home video footage recorded by a lone man. The video showed a little girl just playing and having fun. The man, clearly her stepfather, expressed how he was happy that he got her from the adoption center and how she was the last precious thing in his life after his wife's passing. However, there's one thing I wanted to share with you. Things get really interesting after the 41-minute mark. Family footage cuts to a black screen, and pretty unsettling footage from our familiar location. 4 months ago, I found the split frame of a robotic chicken. Now I can observe more of these things in full view. I sense a real connection to that hospital tape. And you know what's worse about the footage? It ends with the picture of the very same girl I saw at the beginning of the video, with a monotonous voice repeating that she went missing a long time ago. Sounds like that face that took over the computer screen in the last tape was actually Chica. I wonder why she, of all the animatronics, would be the one to show up. Something very suspicious to note is that we see that the tape was manufactured on the very same date Madeline went missing, and then footage was actually recorded onto the tape November 7th, like we saw in the tape. Another thing to mention is that this is the second tape where the same girl's face flashes on screen. Could this be Madeline? We know the world of FNAF is no stranger to the paranormal, so is it too crazy to think that her spirit is taking over the footage and trying to communicate in some way? Even leaving the message in the last tape, "You killed him with worms." Freddy Jr.'s Origins, Part 1, Tape 3. Our tape begins, and we are met with more security footage from inside one of the Freddy Fazbear restaurants, supposedly 20 days after what I imagine is the events from the medical imaging tapes. And based on the dates we see in the file navigation screen, this takes place in between the first two tapes. Like the last tape, we cut through various areas in the building, and we can see the main cast in their original designs. Our footage ends up cutting out, and we are dated on May 12th, 1985, and the tape takes on a whole different style. We aren't looking through security footage or watching in classic analog format. We have entered cinematic short film territory. As we slowly pan over to see the animatronics, we can hear someone rummaging around in the background. We hold on these shots of the lifeless animatronics for a hauntingly long time, before the lights are shut off except for the stage ones. And this is when the tape takes a disturbing turn. Like, very disturbing. From the sounds of it, William is deep frying one of his victims. We watch as the animatronics have these visceral reactions to the sounds, likely thinking back to their own tragic fates. We can see his chica begins to shake, as if wanting to step in and stop this madness. The scene then takes us into the kitchen, and we can see the murder weapons and the graphic mess that has been left behind. All the while, the sizzling from the fryer is still going off. We slowly pan up and can see the fryer, and it's on a 40-minute timer. Maybe my fast food experience was different from most, but it does not take 40 minutes to cook nuggies. The fryer system ends up going off that the filter needs to be replaced, and that it needs immediate skimming. I can only imagine why. We see the alert that the oil is now overflowing and the weight limit has been reached. Text then appears that just says 5 of 6 are ready. 1 is getting ready. 39 minutes left. Are you telling me that 5 other kids had met the same fate? Is William trying out a bootleg version of the Breaking Bad method of disposing bodies? Because the deep fryer seems super inefficient. I can't think of any other reasons as to why you would throw the bodies into the fryer. Not that I thought I'd ever have to think of reasons. Unless he plans on going the extra sadistic mile and serving them to the customers later in the day. And if that's the case, is he just trying to get caught? We cut back to Foxy looking off in horror, as multiple child cries can be heard, perhaps to represent the emotions of the animatronics. They are also children after all. But before we go to our next segment, we get 2 brief, frightening frames. The first is of Foxy where you can see the victim inside, and the next is that of Golden Freddy in a similar fashion, with text that's pretty hard to make out. All I was able to see is the word boiled. If I have my FNAF lore correct, I did watch some long videos in preparation, the child Cassidy was spring-locked into Golden Freddy/Fredbear, one of the more graphic murders committed by William. However, it seems in this universe he had a different fate, being boiled alive. Maybe the other 5 missing children have already been stuffed inside the suits. Our next segment dates us on May 18th, 1985, and we see some city street shots, following a car that makes its way to the Brighton Law Enforcement headquarters, to which we see not only are we getting fully animated animatronic scenes, but human scenes as well. The bar has truly been set high with this one, I tell ya. We are introduced to Mr. Ostwald and Mrs. Hunter, and Mr. Ostwald is not very happy with how an event played out the day before. From the sounds of it, they are shocked at the huge backlash that occurred after William was hit with such a lenient sentence. We can see on the whiteboard behind him that there was a confirmed presence of worms in the food and stale products. They checked Afton's house and belongings, but found no evidence that he was the culprit. At the bottom, we can see that under the list of things they don't know is who put the worms and why the community hates Afton so much, leading Mr. Ostwald to believe that they had insufficient evidence and the community somehow has more knowledge. Mrs. Hunter hands over some classified documents, which is said to be a community survey all about William Afton. We read that he was widely known as a local creep, and his friends weren't any better. A name that stands out right away is Henry Emily, which in FNAF lore was his business partner for a period of time, but in this instance, he is in the nut house after attempting to take his own life. Right under it looks like that role has been given to Carl Thompson. We then see many reports from parents that said that Afton seemed a bit too interested in the children at the restaurant, if you catch my drift, just adding on to the list of bad characteristics to an already messed up guy. The next page we flip to has some more interesting information, like the fact a photo was found on the Freddy Fazbear's parking lot of Chica with visible blood and body parts, suspected to be from one of the 6 child victims' bodies. All these missing children ended up being dubbed the Great Child Abduction of Brighton, which started in 1983 up until 1985. And the first recorded disappearance was that of Charlie Emily, the daughter of Henry Emily, and this seemed to be what sent him towards his mental breakdown. Again, William Afton was the lead suspect, but no evidence was able to truly connect him as the culprit. An autopsy report is then shown for William's son Ethan, who we all know was the victim of the infamous Bite of '83, said to be the start of William's decline in sanity, which all leads us to the current event of the tapeworm poisonings. Lab analysis showed that not only were they tapeworms, but genetically modified tapeworms so that they would develop at a faster rate. Yet somehow, after inspection of William's home and the restaurant, no evidence could be found, which is honestly very odd. Mr. Ostwald then turns over to the TV and begins to play footage of the riots that took place after William was only sentenced to 1 year, when the FDA was urging to at least put him away for 5 for basic food hygiene neglect. We watch as all hell breaks loose throughout the town, cars being set on fire, essentially the whole community showing massive uproar. Mrs. Hunter shares her thoughts on the whole incident, and I gotta ask, did we read the same report?
Okay, but that doesn't seem to add up to me. I've read the entirety of the report, and despite various nasty things written about him, the report mainly summarizes that he's innocent.
Mr. Oswald also believes that William is innocent in all of this, and it's a crazed lunatic from the community out to get him in some way, framing him, if you will. Funnily enough, one of Mr. Oswald's theories is that it was the incident with Bond's Burgers that had people in high suspicion of any family animatronic restaurant owners. Never would have thought that the Walton files would become canon to this world. The other theory is that these people are mad that he is rich. Honestly, at this point, they are making William's job very easy if this is the best they can come up with. But this is when they come up with their best idea yet, which we briefly saw mentioned at the end of the first tape. The plan is to change William's identity to save him from this quote-unquote misplaced backlash, alongside sending him to a different state to serve the rest of his sentence. And not only that, they plan to provide him financial support, a new house. The man that was literally deep-frying children is being given the most gracious offer, and it's pure insanity. Because, you know, it's the people that are in the wrong here. Mrs. Hunter brings up the possibility of William opening up a new restaurant after he gets out, but Mr. Oswald believes that this incident will keep him far away from the family restaurant business. Yeah, sure it will. But according to him, this is a foolproof plan. Thus concludes the meeting. The two shake hands, and we cut to October 5th, 2009, the year that Adam had been finding these old tapes. We see a computer desktop, and someone goes onto it and presumably continues on with an essay they have been working on before they open up their email to see a new message from Adam Turner, putting us through the eyes of Harold. According to the email, Adam has yet again stumbled upon something incredibly bizarre and disturbing. He talks about how he found a huge collection of VHS tapes at the local flea market, some old movies and TV shows, even a rare Star Wars tape that really caught Adam's attention. However, after watching all 43 of the tapes, he claims to have found 2 which were very different, to which he had them digitized and linked through the email. Yet the email ends off with quite the ominous warning. If you value your sleep, do not download them onto your computer. I don't know if it's just me, but when I had those tapes lying around, I suffered from horrible nightmares. Wiping my drive clean and burning those tapes really relieved me from those awful nights. Harold then goes over and clicks on the first tape, to which we get to witness whatever horrors are on it. The tape loads up and we are listening in on a recovered phone call between the man himself, William, and his business partner, Carl Thompson, who was mentioned in that report we saw earlier. During the call, William is in an utter panic. He's received mail from food control and a call letter from the police station. William goes on to give Carl explicit instructions to get rid of any evidence they may have left. So it's not just William who performs all the dastardly deeds. He has a partner in crime assisting him with it all. It sounds like Carl is in possession of those genetically modified worms, and is told by William to drop them into the acid tanks he has in his basement. He is then to take them deep into the forest, smash them, and bury them deep underground. However, it isn't just the worms that need to go into the acid tank.
You know what? Screw the client. Take Felicity out of the freezer, dump her into the acid tank, cut contacts with the client, and dump her as well.
Oddly enough, it sounds like they are working for someone else. More people in on this murderous rampage. Once Carl has finished wiping the evidence, he is to take the acid tanks to a specified ditch place only the two of them know about. Carl then remembers another piece of crucial evidence left around, the animatronics, the ones that likely have bodies stuffed inside. But William had it covered. He dismantled them, and they too went into that aforementioned ditch. William also knows that the only thing they can truly charge him for with the evidence they have is mishandling food safety, so he plans to turn himself in to take advantage of A, the image of himself that will create by being such a good guy turning himself in, and B, the shorter sentence he will get. The two talk for a bit more before William ends the call by destroying his phone, and the plan is set in motion, to which we cut ahead to 2 hours later. We watch as Carl begins to drive to the ditch location, and can see that this is only the next day after his frying incident with child number 6. It doesn't take long, however, for Carl to fail at his duties at not attracting the police, and he winds up getting pulled over. Carl is asked to hand over his keys to the officer and to step out of the vehicle. He hands over his license and registration after over-explaining why he has a video camera.
Yeah, no, I'm just recording a home video of me driving. I've always loved driving down this way, and I really like to watch the footage on this road for special occasions at home, you know, when I want to relax.
Definitely not acting suspicious at all. The officer goes on to explain that Carl was speeding, going about 10 over. You speed demon, Carl. But also, he has a taillight out. This would result in Carl having to pay a fine to the courts, but he is being offered a deal. If he has any spare bulbs and can replace it now, the officer will let it all slide. And instead of just taking the L and paying the fine later, Carl decides to be the stupidest criminal imaginable.
Yeah, we're like, I have bulbs in the trunk.
Alright, could you pop the trunk for me really quick?
Okay.
He's essentially asking to get caught, considering his trunk has the acid jars and a very familiar looking bin that definitely doesn't contain a deep-fried body. When asked about the jars, Carl tries to explain that he was just disposing of old meat from his store by using acid. This story strikes the officer as rather odd.
It's like in movies with dead bodies.
Sounds like he's seen Breaking Bad. But then the officer opens up the bin, and Carl is forced to take matters into his own hands.
What the fuck? Show me your hands!
Well, Carl has just been continuing to add to his list of problems, it seems. He drags the body off camera and throws him in the trunk. Carl then gets back in his car, and the tape ends. We return to the desktop as Harold goes over to watch the second tape, to which we listen in on another phone call between Carl and William. This time, William is calling from jail. Carl congratulates William on his short sentence, and William reveals that due to the riots, he is being forced to vanish out of town. Carl then confirms that William's house was indeed burned down, to which this info seems to be good news to William, considering they did his job of disposing the evidence for him. This call ends rather quick, however, since William wasn't using a police phone. He snatched a cell phone off a guard, and that guard is now returning. Our scene fades out, and we are then met with a collection of TV commercials as the channels flip through. And we are then met with a commercial for a brand new restaurant named Freddy Jr.'s Genuine Pizza, with a brand new founder named Walter Brown. Now this guy should be able to run the place better for sure. We get one more ad shown to us before we cut back to the desktop, and Harold selects the 2 tapes and throws them into the recycle bin. But before he can empty it, his phone begins to ring, and part 1 ends. Now that was all certainly something to say the least. I definitely wasn't expecting this to end up turning into a whole animated short film when I started this journey. So what we know so far is that William and Carl have been working together in committing these atrocities. Who knows when he started, but the earliest instance we get to see is him poisoning his victims with tapeworms by putting them into the food. It's unclear why exactly that would be his method, considering he usually takes them into the back room, kills them, and then stuffs the bodies into the animatronics. But with the poisonings, the children are then sent home to suffer the ailments later, and are brought to the hospital to then meet their unfortunate fate. However, something to note is that William and Carl are working for either one client, or they have multiple clients that they kill children for. Guess murder has just become his side business alongside restaurant owner. Really, the whys behind all of their actions are still up in the air. It definitely seemed like the animatronics from the beginning of this tape had already been possessed, considering their visceral reactions to hearing the victims getting deep-fried. Perhaps more will be answered whenever the release of part 2 comes around, but for now, a lot is still up in the air and up to speculation. If I had to guess, William and Carl are working for a much more sinister mystery person. Whoever that person is, however, who's to say? But the community of Brighton has known for a while that William was someone not to associate with. However, the officers at the law enforcement headquarters just scratch their head and have no idea why this could be, even though they have quite the amount of sources to go off of. But as of now, William has been given his new identity, Walter Brown, and lives in Texas, and to the surprise of no one, has opened up a new Freddy Fazbear's location to continue his reign of terror, and I for one am very intrigued to see where their story goes from here. We did get a small glimpse into the world of Freddy Jr.'s in the security cam tape, where a poor night guard gets attacked and presumably killed by Mangle. And there's also the present-day mystery following Adam and Harold collecting the old tapes as they try to piece together the puzzle. To which another question I have is to who could be calling Harold so late in the night? Now call me crazy, because the timelines wouldn't really add up, but William did tell Carl to await his phone call for further instructions, and the way the tape ends ominously with the phone ringing in Harold's house is definitely raising some eyebrows. We don't necessarily know the ages of these two characters, so who knows? Perhaps Harold has some more connections to the event than we thought. It also seems like something has frequently hijacked the tapes in a haunting fashion. It could be Madeline, since she is the only child we have seen so far. If she or any of the other dead kids are possessing these tapes, it explained that awful feeling Adam was talking about before he deleted the files and destroyed the physical tapes. Guess we will have to await part 2 for any potential answers. But that'll probably be about it for this video. This series really did show it all in terms of its unique style and tons of world building. If you haven't already, I highly recommend you check out the series if you're looking for probably the most disturbing depiction of the FNAF universe to this day. As always, be sure to keep on leaving me recommendations down below, whether it be in the YouTube comments or the community Discord. But if you'll excuse me, this series has left me really craving some Freddy Fazbear's Pizza.